Sting me.
Hello and welcome to another Set It Up in 10 board game video. Today we're going to be looking at the board game Seasons. Seasons is a 2 to 4 player tactical card and dice game. It comes to us from Asmodee. It plays in about 60 minutes or so, depending on your play style. This game is a really fun game. Great components, high production value. The artwork is outstanding. It's just a really good game. This video is going to go over the setup and overview. In Seasons, you take on the role of a powerful mage, and you're battling other players in a tournament. This tournament lasts 12 seasons. Those 12 seasons are broken into 3 years. As each year progresses, each mage gets more powerful. And as that mage, you'll be gathering energy that allows you to summon power cards in the form of familiars and magical items. And you'll use those to gather crystals and prestige points. And together, those crystals and prestige points is the victory points of the game. And the mage at the end of the tournament with the most victory points is crowned the high archmage of the game. And that is your winner. So with that, let's jump into the component and game setup overview for Seasons. All right, so you can see we kind of have the game set up here. I have it set up for a 2-player game. We're going to start with the general game components, starting with the center game board. It has 2 neutral tokens, the first one being placed on the outer season wheel, and the season wheel is broken into 4 seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall. It has numbers going through 1 through 12, and those just represent the months. The inner rings is the transmutation chart, and that just tells you how energy can be converted to crystals as you play the game, kind of as you progress through time. So for instance, fire can be converted into 2 crystals during the winter season, but then in the summer season, fire can only be converted into 1 crystal. So as you go through each season, the transmutation ratios for each energy kind of changes. The center circle is the year track, and that just keeps track of each year as you progress through the seasons. The game is broken into 3 years. As the outer season token on the season wheel travels around from 12 to 1, you would simply move the year track token up 1 year. After year 3, the game would end. You would add up each player's score. The player with the highest score wins the game. Outside of the Seasons game board, you have the Seasons dice, and these dice are really nice dice. They got a really good weight to them. I think they're pretty quality dice. But for a 2-player setup, you would actually only be using 3 of the dice for each season. I just wanted to show you all 5 that you get with the game, just to show you there are a lot more components than there would be just for a 2-player game. But you would play the game with 1 more die than there are players. So for 2-player, 3 die. 3-player, you play with 4 dice, and then for a 4-player game, you would have all 5 season dice. So each season dice has different symbols on them. They have stars, they have energy icons, a transmutation icon. Very nice dice. Moving to the right, you have the energy stockpile, and those are just need to be accessible for all players. We have earth, fire, air, and water. Those tokens you would just be gathering as you play. Over to the left of the game board, we have this the crystal track, and the crystal track simply keeps score of how many crystals each player has accumulated. The main score area has 0 through 99, and then as you go higher than that, there's a 100 and 200 marker, so you could score as many as 299 crystal points on this scorecard. So below the crystal score track, we have the Seasons power cards, and those would just be placed easily accessible by all players, again, because this is going to be a draw deck in the game. To start the game, though, you would deal off 9 cards, 9 power cards for each player. And each player would just kind of set that in their play area for now. The power cards themselves, you get 100 cards with the game, 60 basic power cards, and then 40 advanced. I don't think there's a great big difference between the two. The advanced cards just have a little bit more instructions and maybe a couple more actions that you can play. But there's enough variety in the game where there's a lot of replayability with this game. So the power cards themselves are kind of broken into 2 different types. We have power cards that have a orange border, and then we have power cards with a purple border. And the orange borders are familiars, and the purple borders are magic items. The familiars power cards, they kind of affect other players in the game. So when you play those, they hinder other players' abilities and try to prevent players from doing things. Whereas the purple cards, the magic power cards, as you summon those, they really just kind of boost your own efforts in the game. So it's a good idea to be wanting to play a combination of both of those. So that way you're kind of stopping other players, which kind of creates a little cross-board gameplay, warfare. And then you have your magic items, which are kind of trying to bolster your efforts. The power cards themselves have a couple different areas to keep track of. The top left is the prestige point value of the card. That would be the value that you would add with the crystal score that you gained in the game. You would add those two scores together, your prestige values and your crystal values, add those together. The player with the highest amount, that's the player that wins the game. In the bottom left hand corner of the power cards, we have the action symbols, and there's 3 different action symbols. We have a arrow that points down. That is an action that signifies as the card is entering play, you would then carry out the actions on that card. The second type of action would be an activation icon, and that is just simply represented by a little gear icon. And that simply means that if you can pay the cost to activate the card during your turn, you would just simply take that card and you would turn it on its side, and then you would also follow whatever activation action that card has. And then as your turn ends and comes back, you would straighten that card back out, and then if again you could pay the cost to activate, you could keep activating that card throughout the game. The final action is an kind of a forward circular arrow, and that just simply means that's a permanent action. So that action would take place throughout the game as different triggers might happen. So as the season token passes through to another season, that action might take place each time that happens. So there's a lot of different types of actions that your power cards can have that you just kind of have to keep aware of. But I think that helps keep the game kind of fun, where there's all kinds of actions that could be happening where you're taking things from players and adding things to yourself. That kind of wraps the general game components. Let's jump into the player game components. Each player would start the game with 4 sorcerer tokens, 2 library tokens, a power or a player board, and then each player then would also start the game with 9 power cards that were dealt off the deck when you first set up the game. Let's go through the player board. The player board has 3 kind of zones that you kind of need to be aware of. The top one being the energy reserves. This is where you would place your energy tokens as you gather them throughout the game. And this just helps you keep track of how many energy tokens you have. You're only allowed a maximum of 7 at any one point. You can swap those out. So if you have more than you need of one, you can always swap out for those that you do need, but you can only still have a maximum of 7. The second area is the summoning gauge, and that is the gauge signified by the star icon going from 0 to 15. That just tells you how many cards you can have in your play area. So each card that you have can pay the cost to play. And your summoning gauge, say, is at 1, you could then play 1 power card as long as you can pay the cost. If your summoning gauge is at 2, then you can play 2 power cards as long as you can pay the cost for as you put those 2 cards into play. The third area is the bonus track, and the bonus track allows you to take bonuses on your turn. So if you need to convert energy to energy, that's the first bonus you could take. You could convert 2 for 2 of your choice. The second would be you could transmute that turn. So if you rolled the season dice and you did not get a transmute, but you want to transmute this turn, you could do that this turn. You could raise your summoning gauge +1, or you could, if you rolled the draw 1 card, you could instead draw 2 cards, pick one, and then discard the other. But as you take each bonus, you're allowed to take a bonus on each turn or any turn. But as you do take a penalty. So the first penalty would be -5, the second -12, and the third -20. And as you take that bonus, those penalties would then be taken off of your score at the end of the game. So after you add up your prestige points, your crystals, subtract any bonuses you took, and that would give you your total score. Each player also starts with 2 library tokens, and those tokens are really just to flag or earmark cards that you're going to play later in the game. After the first phase of the game, each player would have 3 cards in their hand, and then 3 cards under their library token year 2, and then 3 cards under their library token year 3. And then as the year track crosses over to year 2, you would pick those cards under your year 2 library token and put those into your hand. So that's just really there just to help you keep track of what cards you're going to have early game, mid game, and late game. And that kind of wraps up the components for the game and the setup for the game. Hopefully that's given you a nice quick overview or look at the game. Like I said, I think the production on this game is really outstanding. It's a really fun game to play. This hopefully gives you a good idea of the setup and the components. Tell us what you think in the comments below. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We're constantly updating those to show you stuff that's going to be upcoming. But again, thanks for watching, and we hope you enjoyed this video.